All right. So, hi, everyone. And thank you for joining Professionals on the Grind, where we share honest self taught career advice with driven individuals. And today we have Stella Kim. Let's start off with you telling us where you're from and what your current position is.
Hi, my name is Stella. I was born, for I think a lot of your viewers are Angelinos, so we know the difference between San Bernardino and LA County.
Exactly.
I was born in San Bernardino, moved to LA County when I was about two, and we've been living in this house ever since then. Right now, I am an RN working on the labor and delivery unit. Um, I just quit my full-time job about a few months ago to make more time and room for my side hustles. I'm
Okay.
working on a few certifications, non-nursing stuff, and I love the freedom of working once a week. I'm also in school right now for my master's in nurse education. I'm hoping to be a professor in the future, have my own classroom. Right now, other than working on the unit on the floor, we call it bedside. Other than bedside, I teach nursing students, pre-licensure students, who are trying to get their RN license. Once a week, I am a clinical instructor for OB units, so that's labor and delivery, postpartum, and NICU. Um, I do that once a week during the days, and then flip to night shift for my bedside. And that's about it. Plus a little sprinkling and some volunteer work here and there.
I love it. And we'll get into that. I completely love it. I think everyone has to have multiple streams of income at this point,
Yes.
right? According to the internet and just
Passive income.
economy. Exactly. So I'd like to start off with a few background questions just to help paint a picture of your journey. So to start off, what is the highest level of education your parents received? And where are they from?
Okay. My parents are from South Korea, but they actually met in LA. Um, and we still go to the church that they got married in. And I love being able to say that. My dad, I think, came straight to LA from Korea. Um, and he actually got his bachelor's degree in traditional Korean music. And he still, that's like still his passion. My and he got to use that a little bit. He's like the president of his own Korean traditional music organization. He's been on like the radio and performances and composing is like his main thing. And then my mom, she landed in Washington, like Seattle, Washington, Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest, straight from Korea, and then somewhere along the way she landed in LA and met my dad in LA at some Korean American club where my dad was like the president and she was it feels weird to say, but a student. And then that's where they met, and the rest is history.
What were their first
Well,
jobs when they got here? And what was your mom's highest level of education? I think I missed that.
my mom's highest level, she was in college for interior design, but didn't get to finish.
Okay.
So I think she always had a little bit of regret about it, but I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
Right, life happens. And yeah, so what was their first position once they got here? What their first job?
I
Once
want to
that-
say my dad's first job was a cook in downtown. I
Okay.
think his older sister, my aunt, ran a restaurant in downtown. And there's a funny story about like my grandpa making like cutting up mangoes and putting it on chopsticks and like
Mhm.
wrapping it in saran wrap with like the tahini and the stuff. And there's a funny story where like customers would be passing by and they would like mush the mangoes and be like, "What is this?" And my grandpa would get so mad at them. But I think his first job, my dad's first job, was a cook at his sister's restaurant. And and then my mom's first job, I want to say also restaurant industry because my grandma ran a restaurant, a Korean restaurant in Koreatown. And she has a story where like she sliced her arm on like the saran wrap like cutter thing. So kitchen setting, yeah. And then my earliest memory of their jobs is they used to run a sports gear shoe store, like
Mhm.
athletic wear and shoes, also in downtown. So they used to have that branch, or they worked under my aunt, and then my dad got his own branch in Koreatown, right here on James M. Wood and Western. I don't know if you guys know Rodeo Galleria. It was in there, and then they ended up getting another one on like Wilshire and New Hampshire, but no more shoe business. They are onto separate, different, completely different paths now. My dad manages a beauty supply store. It's kind of huge, but he manages that. And my mom, she is a she's in the financial industry now, so she helps people with retirement funds, Roth IRAs, like um, life insurance, and Medicare, Medi-Cal most recently. And they both love what they do.
I love that. And it's interesting because you are a first generation immigrant, right? You share that same similarity that many Hispanics, share. And at the same time, Stella, for those that might not know, is also Catholic, right? So we don't really hear too much about Catholic Koreans, right? But my mom loves Stella, by the way. That upbringing, were your parents conservative? And did you understand your status as a first generation? Is it different in the Korean culture when you come in as a first generation, or would you say you were Americanized right off the bat?
Um, well, let's start with the conservative or not part.
Yeah, that wherever
I
you'd like.
I want to say, I don't know if conservative is the right word. Probably definitely traditional,
Okay.
but also not, because my mom, so like a traditional Korean family, the woman, cooks dinner, does the dishes, does all the housework and all that.
Oh
But
my. Mhm.
my, um, well, my mom is pretty Americanized, I guess, or
Okay.
my family is pretty Korean American. I think we're kind of too American for the Koreans and too Korean for the Americans, like that never-ending struggle. Um, Conservative in the sense that, they prefer that we don't date boys until we get to college or
Yeah.
something. And actually, it was my dad's mom who was like, "College, that's kind of too late. Like, you should let them explore a little bit, because it's me and my sister. It's just the two of us."
Okay, grandma.
Um, and so, and also my grandparents came to the US fairly early, I guess. So they were pretty Americanized too. Like my grandma is saying that you should let the girls date, before they get to college. I thought that was pretty different. Um, so conservative in that sense, but like liberal, well, not as, when I think of conservative, I think of like strict.
Okay.
And the opposite of that is like not as strict. They never demanded straight A's. They understood if
Oh
we got
wow.
like B's and C's, because I don't know, you can't just ace everything, you know? Um, what else?
So,
But super traditional Korean in the sense that
okay.
we had to go to tutoring lessons after school. We had piano and art class and Korean school on the weekends, swimming class, tennis. We had to play an instrument other than piano. Piano was basic. And my parents were like, "Oh, taekwondo is too." I said taekwondo like a like a foreigner. They said taekwondo is too common, so they put us in a kung fu classes. Um, we had to get up to black belt. I stopped there, first degree. My sister went up to second degree. Um, what else? We've also done like Korean traditional music with like the drums, fan dancing, um, things like that, because of my dad's background.
Right.
Um, so that's the conservative and not part.
Okay, so you were sort of in between, right? Where it was
Yeah,
like you grew up Catholic, I
well, the
consider
Catholic.
cultural Catholic, right? Where you do the rosary, you go to church, but you're not necessarily anti-choice, or using the conservativeness of machismo, or your mom is like, Stella, you're a girl, go wash your dad's dishes or whatever. That never
My
happened.
mom would not stand for that stuff.
I love it. We love a Catholic feminist, so I love that. So you kind of mentioned your parents, they sound like entrepreneurs, right? They had their own businesses, and even now they've sort of functioned within whatever life has brought onto them. But would you say any of their work preferences or what they ended up deciding to do dictated at all what you wanted to do in life? Because I would imagine your parents are running these businesses by themselves, right? And maybe sometimes you're working on the weekends. What did that look like for you and influencing you with what you ended up wanting to, ultimately go to school for?
Surprisingly, for Korean parents, they never like pushed us to be doctors or lawyers and things like that.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, when they learned that I was considering nursing school, they were like, "You're gonna end up as a doctor eventually, right?" Um, and actually, that was my plan in the beginning. Because straight out of high school, I went to pharmacy school, changed my mind, and thought, "Oh, this isn't for me." And then when I came back to LA and I met with an academic counselor, he's like, "Oh, your prereqs are, you're on the path for med school or like dentistry school. You should use your prereqs towards that." But in order for me to go to those programs, I needed a bachelor's degree anyway. And I thought
Right.
nursing was pretty close. So I just chose that and ended up loving it. And now, after working with doctors, I don't think that would have been the right fit for me.
Right, right.
So I'm kind of happy with that.
So
Um,
they were happy with you deciding whatever you wanted to do. They weren't like, Stella, you need to be a doctor. It's just like, hey, go to college. Did they push for college, or were they just like, get a job and help with the
Definitely. They always emphasize the importance of education for sure, but not necessarily like the doctor, lawyer, fancy title ones. But I do think their work ethics in general shaped me to be the person that I am today. They've always been like part of organizations, whether it's in church or just like community volunteer work. And growing up, my sister and I were part of like Heal the Bay, where we would go to
Oh,
beach
I haven't heard
cleanups.
the other day. Mhm.
We would, what else did we do? Like soup kitchen stuff from church.
Wow.
Like sometimes we would do indoor soup kitchen stuff where we put like goodie bags together for low income families and homeless people. Sometimes we would do like Thanksgiving dinners like on the streets of Skid Row. Um, like we've just and like food banks, LA food bank, and we've
That's
always just
fantastic.
yeah. And
Well,
I thought that was normal. I
you know
didn't
what? It's not. It's
I
not
didn't
anymore. And
know.
you know what's crazy? Because where I work for, but volunteering is no longer a part of the civic duty. People aren't going and saying, I want to go volunteer and help my community. It's not something that parents are passing on to their kids, or
Yeah,
it's been naturally coming from children to say, hey, mom, let's go clean up the beach or things like that. So society has definitely shifted. So it's beautiful to see you, not have any end goal. You just want to help your community.
I will say some of that came from like needing volunteer hours to
Of
graduate
course, of
school.
course.
But a lot of it was even before we got into high school. It was just something we did. And I think, honestly, I think a lot of it comes from being raised Catholic
Yeah.
because the Catholic Church emphasizes helping the poor and the less fortunate and like sick people a lot. And I didn't know that that's like a Catholic thing to do. I just thought that's, I don't know, just something that you do because those people need help. And
Yeah.
so now as an adult, I'm still doing those things. Not as much as before, but I am still, volunteering here and there. And when I see like a potential future partner, I kind of expect that from them, and I didn't know that that's like an extra thing that I'm asking of them. Um, so my ideal person would already be involved in things like that.
You heard
without.
it here first. You want to date Stella? Start volunteering. No, I absolutely love that. And that's setting your expectation and your standards. So that's beautiful. I absolutely love that your parents, instilled that in you. I want to do that to my children. So I think it's fantastic.
You
It's
do or you don't?
I am
Oh,
definitely like get up, we're volunteering, but
yeah.
doing it in a way where you're understanding that you're helping your community because that's what volunteering it
And it's
does.
fun.
It's fun. It's
Like,
fun. And
yeah,
knowing that
it's
it's
fun.
something good, positive thinking, positive outcomes, or just treating others the way you would want to be treated. And why wouldn't you want to help the less fortunate? And so I love that. Fantastic. Let's segue a little bit into your academic career, right? Because I'm looking at it right now. And we had a similar one, but I'm sure the reasons are quite different as to why you staggered. So I see you started at community college at Santa Monica College. You went to University of Connecticut, and then you went to Long Beach. You went back to community college,
Yeah.
and then you went to Azusa Pacific University for your bachelor's, and now your master's.
Yeah.
Can you deep dive what that was like, right? From high school, you went into community college. Did something happen? What occurred in Stella's life that ended so many zigzags with your, college campus life or career?
So that Santa Monica College one, do you see the date on it? I forget when I
I
started.
did. I did. Okay, let me pull it up. It is 2008 to 2010.
Okay, so 2008 is when I graduated 8th grade.
Oh,
So
oh, good, Stella. You know what? You're right. Oh,
yeah.
overachiever. I love it.
So that goes back to my years when I was taking college classes before even getting into high school because as a good Korean, as a good Korean American, I knew that taking these college credit classes would count towards my college credit
How did you know that? Who told you?
uh, because you just know that as a Korean
Oh,
person.
as a Korean. Okay, because I was like, I definitely didn't know that in 8th grade. Like, I was not looking at my community
Yeah.
college.
And
Okay.
fun fact, I don't know if people know this, but if you're in high school, you get to go to community college and take classes for free. That's like a
I didn't know that until I got to high school, like later on, and I'm like, oh, but I thought it was like a special program or partnership with your high school versus I could have taken English and had my first 2 years done
yeah.
once I got to undergrad. Had no idea. So if you're in high school and you're listening to this for whatever reason, go to community college.
And also, I think they just passed something maybe a few years ago where if you're going to college for the first time, like after graduating high school, you also get to go to school for free for like the first 1 or 2 years.
Yes, yes, I think Obama passed that. So
So,
very cool.
anyways, so SMC, I went as a young kid,
Okay.
trying to get those credits. Also, because it's easier to just take the class instead of taking AP classes. You don't
Okay.
have to study for an extra exam. You don't have to pay for it. You just take the class, pass, and you get credit. So that was my SMC. And then I get to high school. I'm still taking these college classes during high school at SMC. And then I got to UConn straight out of high school for the pharmacy program. And then changed my mind. This isn't for me. Came back to LA
Why? Why would
because
you do?
why did I
Because
come back?
now you get paid as a pharmacist. So what happened?
I felt like, okay, so I want to touch on like the importance of mentors later on.
Yes,
But
which we are.
yeah, so when I was at UConn, University of Connecticut, um, it was a 2+4 program. So 2 years undergrad and 4 years grad school. Um, And when I was there, I was in something that's called a learning community. So it's a bunch of other pre-pharmacy students all living in the same dorm room. And we all rushed for a professional fraternity.
Mm.
Um, Super lame, but I loved it. And I thought it was great for networking. Uh,
Yeah.
so we got and it was co-ed. So we got to meet a bunch of um, upper division students who are either already in the graduate program for pharmacy school or people who are already practicing pharmacists.
Okay.
So I would meet these people and they were so miserable. They all hated what they were doing. They were
Right.
either doing it for the money or because they were too far into the program to like change their mind.
Wow.
And I mean, I am I was taking basic classes, but I don't know. I just couldn't see myself doing it for a long time, especially because I'm the type of person who like I'll get cramps or like I'll I don't know, be in a little bit of pain and I don't want to take Tylenol, I don't want to take Advil. I just want to, tough it out and see, have my body fight a little bit. Versus other people who will like turn to meds like this. So
Right.
me being somebody who doesn't turn to medication like that, I felt weird pushing it to other people. And also the fact that like diabetes medication can mess up your other organs. And like because of that, you may have to start taking like liver or kidney meds and things like that. And
Right.
so I didn't like that. And I said that to one of my friends who is a pharmacist now, and he kind of thought of it the other way. And he said, "But Stella, that's why we are the pharmacists, and we catch those things before their other systems become bad." So, I mean, more power to him for finishing the program, but I just couldn't see myself doing it.
Right.
So I called my parents. I mean, I already signed up for the PCAT, and I took it, did better than I expected, but um, I took it after withdrawing from the program. I just ended up taking the test because, I already paid for it. It was already scheduled. Might as well take it. But what was really heartwarming to me was I was still in Connecticut, like trying to figure out my life. And I called my parents and I was like, hey, you guys, I think I want to take a break. I think I want to take a semester off and think
Wow.
about what I really want to do. And Diana, my mom was like, you know, if that's what you think you have to do, then do it. I would
Wow.
rather you figure out your 4 years for the next 40 years than to like force yourself these 4 years and like regret the next 40 years. And that just made me so feel loved and
Yeah, no,
understood.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So
So
many
I
people out there who my parents wouldn't. They'd be like, "Hell no, you lazy, blah blah blah." That's why I
right.
was like, "Okay, I can't drop out of school even though I got kicked out. Let me figure it out," because not going to school was not an option. Like I was just like, "Okay, I have to do it." There's no summer. There's no year in Europe back then or anything
Just
like
to
that.
pay
But
for it.
right, exactly. I love to hear that because I think having a supportive parent that truly understands perspective of time, right? Like if you take one semester, 1 year off, it's not going to impact your life as much as you think it is. And there's so many people who end up going to university for 5 years. You think that 1 year really impacted your life all that much? It didn't. But a lot of immigrant parents who have this perception of school and they're seeing everyone else graduate in 4 years, they're like, no, no. So your mom is amazing. Shout out to your mom. Absolutely love that. So carry on with your story. So you come back, take your semester off,
Yeah.
and how did you decide, what field you wanted to go to? So you said you talked to an advisor.
Yeah, so I talked to my parents, got the okay to come back to LA and take the semester off. Well, yeah, came back to LA, and then yeah, I didn't enroll in school right away. Um, I took that semester off, and I think so. I got back. So I was at UConn about like a year and a half. I didn't get to the graduate part. And then when I came back, actually found the part-time job in a Korean bookstore. Um, and I ended up working there for about 3 years. But 1 year into the bookstore, I realized that I was kind of wasting my time. I think I was like 19 or 20, something like that. And I felt like I was wasting my time. So then I enrolled in LACC, like
Mhm.
15-minute drive from my house, and I just started taking prereqs because no matter what path I wanted to take, I knew that I had to get my GEs out of the way.
Right.
So I started taking my prereqs, and then that's when I met with the academic advisor who encouraged me to go like the doctor dentist way. But then I also knew that nursing was an option. Um, and what drew me to nursing was the fact that all of the prerequisite classes I was taking, um, the ones that I enjoy taking, were prereqs for nursing school.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, huh, maybe this is a sign. Like, I need a bachelor's degree anyways. I already like all of the classes that I'm taking, which was well, I can't say opposite of the pharmacy school situation, but it was just, I don't know, it felt like the right thing to do.
When
And I
that's
think what also changed around that time was I kind of figured out how to study and what
yeah.
worked for me and what didn't work for me. So studying kind of became fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that, I couldn't believe that I was like that student who thought like studying was fun. But yeah, that was me. So I applied to a bunch of four-year universities for nursing programs.
Right.
And then there was this one time I was in the computer lab at LACC, and I ran into a classmate from like I forget what class it was, but it was a sciencey class. And I ran into her in the computer lab, and she was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And we were catching up. And she mentioned to me that she was in the nursing program at LECC. And she was like, "Yeah, you should apply. It's a pretty good program, like way more affordable than the four-year places." And at that point, I'd only applied to four-year universities because I just wanted my bachelor's like over with.
Right.
And then I asked her, I was like, okay, like, yeah, maybe. When is the application due? And she's like, oh, tomorrow's the last day. Like, it's the due date. And so I was like, okay, why not? I was already on campus. I was in the computer lab. I already had my high school transcripts and everything I needed because I already signed up or
You're
because
applying to universities already. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I just put everything together. Oh, and one good thing about that was I already attended like an orientation session, which was a requirement to turn in a packet. And I just went just for fun, because I was on campus one day and it happened to like work with my schedule. So everything was checked off. I put it together, took it to the nursing office, ended up being waitlisted, and I actually got a call 2 weeks before the semester was supposed to start. And this was after I got accepted to the four-year universities, did like college trips to check out the campus and the program. Um, so I put all of those other schools aside and just decided to go with LACC's nursing program. Close to home, affordable. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Okay, so Stella, you know what's so funny? I don't think because Stella and I met at LACC.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, right? That's where we know each other. And I don't think we've spoken about our journey at community college. And I just want to say I share so much of that same similarity, right? I found myself kicked out of school. If you are in doubt in life, go to community college.
Yeah, you're still out there.
anyone, but LACC, that's the one you should go to. And I was given the same advice, just go take a bunch of classes, see what sticks. I was so lost. I was like, same thing. I have to finish my undergrad, like my general eds. Like, let me figure this out. Professor Meyer, do you remember?
Yeah, poli-sci.
I have a poli-sci major. He had this activity that really impacted my life and why I decided to go with poli-sci and community outreach and public admin ultimately, right? Where you were either a part of the unions or you were a part of the management. And I was a part of the management. And the little session or group workshop was you got to negotiate, and they gave us a list of things to negotiate. I was so good at screwing over the unions. I was like, man, if I was on the other side, I could really help people.
Ooh.
And that changed my life forever, because let me just share how Stella and I met. So I'm thinking I want to transfer anything on my resume. And my professor's like, well, if you want to start a poli-sci club, go ahead and do it. And so I'm like, okay, I'll be the president, right? Because I need it on my resume. So when I leave, and Stella is a nursing student, we had the most random people, because he was letting me go to all of his classes to just give an announcement about this club. I go to her class and she's there and she shows up to the first meeting, and there we are. We ended up
This was you. You're like, okay, I have a piece of paper here. If you want to sign up, it's open. You want a position, we'll give it to you. You It's gonna be great for your resume. Just sign up right here. I'm gonna leave it here. All right, see you there. Bye.
Listen, I'm about business. You're for it. Let's do it. If not,
Yeah.
don't worry about it. Don't put your name on that paper. But all in all, very positive community college experience. Very
Yeah.
impactful.
Going off of that, you influenced me to make the nursing club.
Oh,
You know
I
that?
love that.
Dude,
I
there
know.
was no nursing club at a school with a nursing program.
And it's huge. It's a huge nursing program at LACC. Yeah.
So this is what happened. I'm a first semester student. I go to Club Rush. I go out to the quad. There's all these like tents, easy ups, tables, whatever. And I like walked around the entire thing looking for the nursing club, and I couldn't find it. So I go up to like the people running it, and I was like, "Hi, excuse me, where's the nursing club?" And they're like, "Oh, actually, we don't have one. Do you want to charter the nursing club?" And I was like, "What the heck kind of a school is this where they have a nursing program but not a nursing club?" And then I thought of you and how we only needed like, what was it, like 3, 4 other students?
Yes. Yes. Just to start the club, to charter it, essentially. Yeah. And it
Yeah,
was you, me, Kim, and Lou. And
yeah.
we did it. Yeah.
And so I knew that we get money for like our meetings. We can
Right.
get snacks or whatever. We get a dedicated classroom for like study sessions or meetings or whatever. And plus the resume situation. So I
Exactly.
was like, okay, I already have a group of people I study with. We have more than enough people to join the club, to make the club. So I just had them sign up and we made the club, and we met like once a week to study, really. And what was baffling to me is that I asked my fundamentals professor, so my first semester professor, to like be our advisor, and we had a few meetings. And then the nursing director found out that we went behind her back to make this club. So then she got really upset,
Wow.
made us get rid of the club.
What?
And then, so as a second semester student, I was like, okay, we don't have to make it a nursing club. So I decided to call it Scrub Club, because anybody who works in the medical,
Loopholes.
rat tech people, we have the nursing people, we have, pre-med people, anybody interested in like the medical stuff, you are all welcome, because we're all going to be wearing scrubs one day. So Scrub
Right.
Club, second semester. And then third semester, the director decided, she came to her senses and she said, well, okay, we'll support the nursing club. You have my blessing. And then,
That
so
sounds like an ego trip. So I would have gone to the dean and I would have reported for your
I
friend.
mean, I wasn't trying to, there are ways around it, no
Right.
hard feelings. So then after that, fourth semester, pass it on to the next group of people. And now the nursing club is still thriving. I am
Oh,
happy to
I
say.
love that. I think the poli-sci club is dead. I love that, and here's the thing about school, right? Or anywhere you find yourself in life, that network, we continued our friendship
Yeah.
even after, like, even if we had like a few years or a year, months where we didn't talk, we still could always reconnect.
Yeah.
That a time in our life was so impactful because
Yeah.
we were just trying to
For
figure
sure.
it out. And we were like, okay, what are we going to do with our lives? Right. We kind of like effed up a little earlier. Like, let's figure it out. So I love to hear it. Shout out to the Scrub Club, the nursing club at LACC. Love that.
I don't know, is this what people call humble brag? This is just straight up bragging, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the biggest accomplishments, or one of the things that I'm proudest of through the work of the nursing club, was the feminine hygiene drive.
Oh,
That was like my last thing I did as a fourth semester before graduating. I What triggered this? I don't remember, but something about the pink tax, like how female razors are more expensive than male razors. Female shampoo is more expensive than like male shampoo, and like the fact that pads and tampons are taxed.
right. And condoms aren't, by the way.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that.
mhm.
And the pads and tampons aren't provided in like prisons and stuff. So I was like so shocked learning this. And so I was like, you know what? Pads and tampons should be a women's right. So then I started like a drive, like a pad and tampon drive, where we were taking in donations. And at some point, I think we came up with the idea of like asking ASG, the Associated Student Government, for funding. So we made like a list of different products in different price ranges, like brand names, how many we would need. We were thinking for it should be available to all female students at school. Um, so then we came up with like an Excel sheet. Um, Shout out to Fiona who like did a lot of that work. She ended up being the next president, I think, like 2, 3 semesters later. But
Yeah.
we put all of it together, presented it, and then they came back to us and said, "Hey, guess what? A generous donor, it was some bank, some generous donor is willing to double what your proposed like budget is, and we're gonna put it in like what was it, like the cubby something, where they have like clothes and food for students."
Yeah.
So they like packaged it in little like brown paper bags, and they had it for students to just pick up whenever they needed it. So
That's so impactful. And
that's
I
cool.
want to point out to a few people or whoever's listening, right, is you can create whatever you would like and it's going to help your career. This isn't something that you created because you were thinking long term, right? But now you're in an interview, you can say, I was able to fully operate, create, and campaign for, this tampon, drive that I hosted for LACC, a school of 5,000 schools, right? So the way you can sell things as you're doing things for your career later down the line. I think I ended up using a few things from community college for some events that I ended up doing, but at the same time, you don't think long term, right, when you're doing this. So if you're a professional and you're thinking, I want to help the community, I want to do something, even with church, right? I think I ended up using we did a street cleaning at my church. I technically facilitated and helped with the announcements, helped with like the volunteers. And it was something I later on used for an interview. So using what you want to do to impact your community, to impact people around you, or to do a mild protest for the pink tax, because fuck the pink tax, you can then you're gonna reap from those, small seeds that you're planting later on, and you're not even going to realize it. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've used it for any interview examples, but fully facilitating something of that scale, Stella, is definitely worth mentioning, as you move on in your career. So
Yeah.
that is fantastic work.
And not just because you're thinking of your future like career, but just because
Right.
you know it's the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I love that. So, okay, let's move on to, so you get into the nursing program. I do want to speak a little bit because the nursing, world is so competitive. I remember, being at community college or even being at UC Riverside and even Cal State LA, and everyone is like, it is so hard to get into nursing school. And a few of our friends were also trying to get into nursing school, nursing programs. What was that process like to you, and how did you stand out? Was it your grades or was it your extracurricular activities?
Well, LACC actually they go by the lottery system. So, I mean, that was
Oh,
kind
I
of
didn't know
luck.
that.
Yeah. But I do know that other schools you get points. So depending on what your GPA is, obviously higher the better, you get points. Extracurriculars, you get points. I don't know what else you would get points for, but LACC is not one of those programs. So I was waitlisted, got in, um, and then once I graduated from there, oh, LACC has a bridge program where while you're in the associate program, you can attend a bachelor program at the same time. I think starting in like the second or third semester. I think third semester and fourth semester.
Mhm.
So I did that for a short time at Cal State LA. So I took bachelor level nursing classes while I was at LACC, and then some paperwork issues, and I couldn't continue there after graduating. So then my next move was to go to Azusa, and Azusa Pacific University has a pretty good reputation for nursing school.
Okay.
um so I did that, graduate. So I did the RN to BSN program at Azusa, took a semester off, and then like my personality, I felt like I was wasting time during
Yeah.
that semester, like after graduating from the bachelor program. So then I was like, well, I guess I'll just go back to school since I'm feeling like this
Was
and
it
want to
wasting
make
time or were you applying to jobs?
say that again.
Was it wasting time or were you applying to jobs and not getting anything? Or you
Oh, I
just
was already working. I was
okay,
working while attending the BSN program. I think I've always, maybe except for the third and fourth semester of LACC, I've always been working while going to school.
could you talk about that a little bit? Because I think a lot of people, especially in the community college world, they get stuck in the money, right? And they're like, I want to make more money. I'll just, be a part-time student, sometimes be only a one semester, one class a semester student.
Mhm.
So how did you remain focused and what was that like for you balancing both working and going to school?
So I think one big blessing during all this time was that I was living with my parents while I was going to community college and the BSN program. Um, so I know that not having to worry about rent or food and just working for my own allowance
Right.
was like
A
a,
relief.
yeah. But the reason I wanted to work was because I don't want to ask my parents for money, you know? Um, and oh, I also want to say people should take advantage of like grants, Pell grants and stuff.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Did you
I
get
mean,
FAFSA by any chance? I think I didn't ask you, and this is super late in the game, but did you apply for FAFSA? Did your parents
I
help you with
did.
that?
And I know that you have your family income has to be like a certain, it can't be more than a certain amount.
Right.
So I realize that not everybody qualifies, but I don't think it hurts to try applying.
Right.
I actually got paid to go to school at LACC and scholarships. Please, people, do not sleep on those scholarships. I was told by LACC Foundation every semester that they have leftover money because not enough people apply. And I had
Wow.
one semester I got 3 scholarships because they had so much leftover money. So that's one way. And to get money while you're going to school, you just write an essay and stuff. Um, and then the whole thing where students are stuck in like the I want to make money, so I'm going to only take one class at a time situation.
Right.
I use this analogy with my friend recently who is still working like a part-time job and like doesn't want to jump back into school because he's like, but what about the money? And
Right.
he also lives with his, so this is the analogy I used. I said, if you invest in school now, then you're working towards your brick house. You know, like the 3 little pigs, there's the straw house, the wood house, and the brick house. Obviously, the brick house is the most stable one. And I said, I know that it's going to take longer, but if you go to school now, eventually one day you're going to have a brick house. If you keep working these part time jobs that pay like a little more than minimum wage, you're you're forever going to be in a straw house. And I was like, wouldn't you rather? The fact that he's living with his parents now is like a blessing.
Right.
So I said, take advantage of that. And you're gonna age no matter what. That's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger like quote. He's like, the years are gonna go by no matter what. It's the question of what are you gonna do in that time. So I don't know. I know that sometimes, like, not everyone is fortunate to be in a
Right.
situation where they don't have to worry about money, but scholarships, financial aid, maybe don't take out loans until you figure out the grant stuff. I don't know. I always like to think if there's a will, there's a way.
1000%. And thank you for sharing that analogy because sometimes you do need to put things into different perspectives to fully see, the light at the end of the tunnel. Because right now, your instant satisfaction is your paycheck.
Yeah.
But when you start opening social media and you see all your friends graduating, and you see your friends buying your first house and doing all these things, it's because they did the grunt work. at the
Yeah,
beginning, and you just kind of have to pay your dues and do your own grunt work, and then it'll have that successful. And it doesn't matter if you're going to community college, trade school, or starting your business. Like you
trades.
have there's like grunt work that needs to be done at the beginning of everything that you do. So thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah.
you finish your program, you take your semester off, you realize I need to go back to school,
Yeah.
which was my mistake. I shouldn't have taken a break. I was like, I'll work on my career a little bit. I regret it, Stella. I should
Did
have
you
gone
both?
straight to school. Well, because you get used to your life as a professional. You just go to work, you clock out, and you enjoy your time versus, you clock out and you have to study. You clock out, you have class. You clock out, you have something to study for, right? You have something to read. And knowing the life you lived as a full adult with a full paycheck and just, your normal adult accessibilities, you're like, I was like, damn, I miss my old life. And so, but all in all, I don't regret it. It's going to pay off. But it was, if I could do it again, I would go to school straight after undergrad. But all in all, you went straight for it, right? You said one semester, that's it.
Yeah, one semester. And also, I think what helped me go back to school was the fact that my hospital provided, like, they have a reimbursement program. So, did your company have something like that?
Nothing,
Oh,
nothing.
yeah, that makes it harder. I think it's also because hospitals want their staff to go for their higher education. Um, right now, there's like this movement where, yeah, there's a lot of nurses, older nurses, who only have their 2-year degree. And you are an RN, whether you have a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. An RN is an RN. But now they're slowly trying to transition everybody to the bachelor level. And this is like a new update, but they're trying to get people, nurses, to eventually, like the new young generation, they want them to have their doctorate at some point.
Oh,
So they are making it easy for nurses to go back to school. And some hospitals have like full tuition reimbursement, but they have contracts with certain schools. And if
how
you
does someone
go,
find out about this? Do they talk to admin? Are you talking to your direct manager? How are you finding these resources or this information?
I think was talking to a coworker, and when they heard that I was paying out of pocket, they were like, "Why are you doing that? You know we have a reimbursement program,"
Hmm.
or something like that. But definitely, my I learned from my coworkers, and also that's something you should ask during interviews. Like, does your company provide reimbursement, like tuition reimbursement to students? And there is a cap. Um, I think for my hospital, it's something like $3,000 per year. But I mean, it doesn't cover everything, but that's still better than nothing. That's something is better than nothing.
1000%. I think that's almost what 80% of tuition for some schools, maybe even 90. So I think it's great. Like my school is what 4,000, almost $5,000. So that would cover something. So I think that's fantastic. And again, you have to ask questions and network. I think for my first company, I had asked, hey, it's a nonprofit. Do you guys do that forgiveness? Because there is a forgiveness
Oh
that
yeah.
your company has to sign off, and it's technically it's bad because it's like 10 years or something like that. Then your company, and you have to stay with the same company for that amount of time. So it's something wild, right? But I was aware of it and I knew to ask. So I think, like you, some nursing students or nursing staff might not be aware that it's going to get paid for by their companies. And just to sort of say this too, thank goodness for these hospitals, because companies, organizations, they don't pay for higher education anymore. So it's fantastic to hear that this field is actually moving towards going back to that and helping their employees advance for the organization and ultimately for society. So I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, there are nurses where they're like, I'm good with my 2-year. Why would I trouble myself and go back to school when, like, at my old hospital, it was a 2% raise from like your associates to your bachelor,
Mhm.
and then another 2% from bachelor to master's. But like these nurses are making a lot of money, especially because they've been there a long time,
Yeah.
and like they're unionized, and they make a lot of money even with their 2-year 2-year degree. So they're like, why would I go through the trouble of going back to school, doing homework, this and that, and they're just content with where they are.
Right.
So, I mean, there's always different types of people, no
And
matter.
that's okay because not everyone is going to be driven to pursue their BA, or if you're okay with that, that is perfectly fine. It's not a problem. You just have to assess where you're at and what you want. And I think that's what really makes that difference with the questions that you're asking the people around you and your, supervisors versus the life you choose to live. If that's it for you, then that's it for you, Since we're on the topic of money, I'm gonna grab this question and ask it right now.
Okay.
And I think I know your answer, but I have a follow up. Did you choose your major for the money or for the passion? Or no, did you choose your career as a nurse, right? Because I think it's sort of synonymous with like nursing, it's a major and your career.
Think I can confidently say it wasn't for the money, because if you're in nursing for the money, you're not going to last a long time.
So,
Because at some point, you're just going to be like, I don't get paid enough to do this.
mhm.
And you're going to want to leave and do something else. And plus, I don't know. I guess I got lucky in the sense that I love what I do and it pays well, but I can confidently say I didn't do it for the money.
I love that because I think there has been a recent shift. And I think I read that somewhere where people are choosing to become nurses, specifically registered nurses, for the money. It has now become a very um, financially driven job option for people because they know there's money. And then the whole travel nurse thing. And then it's like, what career is going to give you the most money? And what we saw with COVID, with so many nurses quitting, it wasn't as sure, politics aside, right? Where, what we used to associate nurses to is people, employees, nurses who are going to help society
Mhm.
through thick and thin. Like you're there to help people
Yeah.
and you're sacrificing your selfishness. And we got to a stage in society where nurses, the most selfless, career, were choosing to be selfish and put themselves over society. And not to say it was wrong or right or anything like that by any means, but it's just so interesting to see the shift in the
Yeah.
culture within that. Do you have any opinions
Dude,
along with that?
if I was in nursing for the money, I would have hopped on the travel nursing train like that. One, I honestly was scared to leave my hospital and
Okay.
like go somewhere else because I was still a baby nurse. I got hired to my labor and delivery unit, like my first bedside nursing position. Well, I guess second. I did like GI stuff, gastrointestinal stuff, endoscopies, colonoscopies for a short time as a new grad. And then March 2020, I got like my hire date was March 9th. Like that was when I did orientation and everything. And then the world shut down March 11th.
Right.
So, I was a baby nurse, so I couldn't, even if I wanted to, I couldn't do the travel nursing situation. But even when I became eligible to do travel nursing, I didn't do it because, again, I wasn't in it for the money. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say something about the money part, but I lost it. Dang. Was it?
It's always about the money. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
No.
I remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so this is going off of me not doing it for the money. The program that I'm in for nurse education, it's so that I can be a professor one day, right? Have my own classroom and stuff.
Right.
But we all know that teachers don't get paid a lot, right?
Right.
And this is true for nursing professors too. I would be taking, so the bedside job that I have now pays twice as much as the clinical instructor job that I have now. So already I'm getting paid half of what I get paid compared to the hospital pay. And so eventually, when I do go full mode into the professor mode, I will be taking a pay cut.
Mhm.
But that's okay for me because I will be doing something I genuinely love, and I think my mind and my heart will be more at peace. And to
Right.
me, that's worth more than however much money they're going to be giving me. So,
I love that. I love that. And to segue back to education, and I know you mentioned that for nurse, it's sort of, turbulent with what people decide what they want to do, would you personally recommend someone to go and pursue their BA and then pursue their master's for this field?
I think it depends on what they want to do. So they can be a bedside nurse, an RN with the 2-year degree. Um, Nowadays, it might be a little bit harder to get hired with just a 2-year degree. But
Really?
yeah, but if you're not picky about where you want to work, you can still get hired with an associate's degree. But I think a lot of places are probably hiring you on the condition that you will get your bachelor's like within a few years or something. Um, that's not to say that there aren't hospitals out there who won't hire you just because you have your associates. I'm sure there are places out there who will hire you with just the associates. I think depending on what the person wants to do in the future, you can or you don't have to pursue higher education. For me, I am in like that mindset where a higher degree usually and probably opens up more doors. So why not? Especially if it's, kind of being paid for. And for me, wanting to teach, I want to get to like I have to get to the highest I can get in order for me to teach a wide range of students. So, yeah, I mean, if you're okay with, yeah,
I just
depends.
It's dependent on what you see yourself doing. So
Yeah.
to segue into your career, right? Because I see you've worked for 3 hospitals, and then currently you're working at a hospital as a labor and delivery registered nurse, and you're also a clinical instructor. So, did the trajectory of your career follow the trajectory of your education, or was it situational where you said, "Oh, I don't like this hospital. Let me go and apply to another hospital"? What does this resume paint for you?
I think, well, wow, reflecting on my life, I think a lot of my decisions kind of happened by accident. The clinical instructor situation, I actually got so I've always liked teaching.
Mhm.
So, um, as a bedside nurse, depending on what contract your hospital has with schools, you'll have pre-licensure students come to your hospital. Maybe it's like once a week. And you get to follow a nurse around. That's part of your nursing school. You have to have direct patient care hours. So you have to follow a nurse around and like, do the basic stuff like take their blood pressure and their temperature and like, I don't know, give them their breakfast tray and things like that. Like the bare minimum nursing things.
Right.
And I had a few opportunities to have a student shadow me, and I really liked teaching them this is what we do and why we do it. I always love teaching the why of things. Um, so I really liked that experience. And then I also had, even from like nursing school, I had people in my study group and even other students like, hey, you make this really easy to understand, maybe you should be a teacher. And I even had like my parents, my patient parents, I'll teach them how to swaddle or I'll teach them how to do certain things. um, and they would kind of, I've had a few people ask me, "Are do you teach somewhere?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, maybe you should." And so I had a few people around me tell me that I was good at it and maybe I should pursue it. And
Right.
then the clinical instructor stuff, it kind of happened by accident because I got an email from APU where I got my bachelor's, and they'd sent out like a SOS email, and they're like, "Hey, we really need clinical instructors for the upcoming semester, and these are the different units we need people for." And I saw obstetrics as one of the open slots, so I was like, I think I qualify for this. I think I've been a labor and delivery nurse for long enough. So I emailed them back and I said, I'm interested. And then they said, okay, great. Well, and then we did like the interview process, um, got to meet the director who happened to be, well, anyways, the interview process happened. I did my onboarding, and
How did you
then
prep for it? Did you just feel confident, or what was your preparation to interview for this? Because you had no instructor experience prior to this, right? So how did you sell yourself?
I think it was half of they really needed people and half of I was qualified.
For
So then
company.
it was just good timing. What do they say? Luck is being prepared for your future opportunity or something like that?
I don't know, but I like it. Okay.
It's something. I might be butchering it, but I was qualified for it and there was a need for me. So then you put those two together and then I was hired as an adjunct faculty member. And then that was a few years ago. Uh, I I kind of struggled in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of hard. I try to remember how my clinical instructors, went about their day and try to structure my routines after them, but it was kind of hard trying to remember how they did it. And luckily, ever since I started, every semester I work with a professor. Um, so their main professor is the didactic professor who does the lectures, and then there are several clinical instructors because you can only take up to like 10 students to each site. So
Right.
it's anywhere from like 3 to 4 clinical instructors all at different sites, but one lecture professor. So luckily, every semester that I pick up another clinical instructor, like a clinical site, I'm paired with a professor who is more experienced and has better guidance. So every semester, I'm learning more from the didactic professor, which is great for me as a clinical instructor because I get more guidance, and great for me as a future didactic professor because I get to see what I like and what I don't like, and what kind of professor I want to be in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. And while we're on this topic, did you have a mentor throughout this whole journey? How do you go about looking for your mentors?
Oh.
And would you like to give a mentor a shout out?
Um, so at my old hospital, um, it's weird to call it my old hospital, but it is, I guess. My house supervisors were very patient and kind and supportive. Um, it was a pretty steep learning curve for me. It took me a while to kind of know what I'm doing and be comfortable with it. Um, but they were always patient with me throughout the entire thing, and I still keep in touch with them, and I'm so grateful for them. They also went back to school. Um, and so seeing them, like one of them has a full on family with like 6 kids, but she was still going to school and doing homework and being in charge of the entire night shift unit. And then the other one was in her master's program. And I was like, I guess I'll do it too. So that was kind of like inspirational. So that's from my hospital side.
Right.
Um, and then outside of the hospital, I had a church person reach out to me when I was a baby nurse. And she was like, hey, I am the, and I know her from church. And she reached out to me and she was like,
Go to church,
hey,
people.
oh, go to church, people. She reached out to me and she was like, hey, we have an open position for something like social media coordinator. Just take pictures, upload it. And she was at the time, she was the president of the Korean American Nurses Association of Southern California. It's a mouthful.
That's impressive, though.
Yeah, we call it Kanask. And she was the president. There was an open position. So I accepted it. And then, so I guess everyone in that organization is kind of like my mentor. After her, the second president that I worked with, she is a professor at UC Irvine. Um, and I got to work with her for 2 years as the secretary. I was the secretary. And then now I'm working with the third president. And I told her I want like the easy work, like just making flyers, like arts and crafts stuff for our
Right.
events. But I ended up I don't know how to say no yet. So I'm like filtering all the emails and doing the background coordinating for our events and stuff. So working closely with senior nurses who have experience in their field and being surrounded by people who want to do more than just bedside nursing. Um, I consider all of them my mentors. So there's the first one that I worked with at kind of the first president. She is a PhD trained RN who works, well, she doesn't work there anymore, but she does like patient satisfaction surveys and like how can we make um, the patient outcomes better research,
Right.
which I'm interested in eventually. And then the UCI professor, she's a clinical instructor for nurse practitioner students, as well as she also does like clinic patient care and research. And then my current mentor, who actually is my literal preceptor for my master's program, she is a psych mental health NP. NP is nurse practitioner, who is in the doctorate NP program at UCLA. And so I love surrounding myself with people like this. Again, it happened kind of by accident because
Naturally,
I
yeah.
said yes to one thing and just continued. But yeah, I think I view all of the older nurses as mentors because
And
everybody has something to share and teach, you
of
know?
course, and are you shy? Do you wait for them to talk to you? Do you actively, search for relationships with these older nurses because they're so knowledgeable, right? So
Yeah.
how do you approach that? How would you recommend someone else approach, a mentorship from someone with, a PhD? Like that sounds intimidating sometimes. So what would your
Um,
advice be?
these relationships kind of just happen because I'm a member of an organization. So, one, I would say seek out professional organizations because even though you're always doing like the best,
Right.
there are other people out there who are also the best that they can be. And I know that we keep talking about like advancing ourselves and doing more and being
Mhm.
extra, but I also understand that not everybody is wired that way. And some people are okay with going home and just watching TV and hanging out with their friends and family. So I get that. I just want to acknowledge that.
Right.
But as for approaching mentors, I don't know, just talk to people who you, I don't know, look up to. You like the way they do their job. Um, even, I think, even the ones who you don't like look up to, they have something to teach you too, because they're an example of what you don't want to be, I guess.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you touched on professional organizations. So this transcends all careers. There's business associations, there are political associations, nursing associations. As someone who is working, you're going to school, you have two jobs, you go to church, you do volunteer work. How do you maintain or how do you push yourself to do a professional organization? Because a lot of the time you allocate to that is unpaid. What is it that helps you motivate you to do it? Is it knowing the future outcome, or what really drives you to be active? Because that's my next goal once I'm done with school, and you're doing it all at once. I'm telling myself, I'm in school, I'm not going to do that. But what is it? What do you do? What are you telling yourself?
I think growing up doing these extracurricular activities kind of just shaped me into thinking that it's normal to have all of these things going on at the same time.
I love it.
And also, um, I think I care a lot about the future generation. I
Mm.
think that's why I want to go into teaching because I can impact a lot of people at one time versus if I were to do bedside nursing, as a labor and delivery nurse, you only get a maximum of 2 patients. When I float to postpartum, 4 couplets, so like 4 moms and 4 babies.
Right.
So I'm limited in what, like how many people I can impact. Like, yeah, it's more intimate. I spend 12 hours with them, but like if I think of the school aspect of it, I can have anywhere from like 20 to 30 students. They are like just like fresh minds, sponges, willing to like learn everything they can. Um, like my current group of clinical students, they are a perfect example. So I have 9 students right now, and 4 of them really want to be labor and delivery nurses or NICU nurse. And these students, Diana, they making me work. They want to do everything they possibly can, like everything they're able to do as students. They'll text me and be like, "Professor, can I do this?" And then while I'm doing that procedure, I get another text. "Hey, can you come to my side and can we work on this?" And like I'm running back and forth with these kids. And next week is their hell week where they get to take that day off in order to prepare for the final exam, which is
Yeah.
the week after that. So tomorrow is supposed to be their last day. But these students are like, "Hey, can we go to the hospital during Hell Week because we really want to experience the bedside as much as we can?" And now I have to go an extra shift,
You're
which
a
is
fantastic
okay with
teacher.
because if they are willing to learn, then it's my duty to be there for them, you know?
I love that. No, I think that's fantastic. And I think that also because I had a mentor too, and her giving back to me makes me want to give back to other people, which, on a weird connection, actually a direct connection, which is why I started this. Like all of her advice helped me. And I can see that within yourself too, right? Because we had spoken, a few days ago, and you mentioned, your mentor essentially is, I don't know, she's influenced you, right? A little bit, where it's like, oh, she wrote a book.
Such a boss.
There was like, yeah, like it's fantastic. Like this book has never been written
Yeah.
anywhere, right? It's like a first Korean nursing, guide book. And it's amazing what that impact is, but also seeing how other people are so willing to share their information, share their knowledge, and share their, compassion and just life, or just being that general proximity, impacts you, because I see that you like are so happy and willing to give back to people, because when you've experienced someone giving back to you, it makes it 10 times easier to just want to give that back to other people. So
Yeah.
I love that. I love
You
that.
gotta
So
pay it forward. And
you
like
do, exactly.
young minds are our future, you know? Actually, our first event of this new presidential term for Kanask is gonna be, we call it 선배, 후배. So 선배 is the elder and 후배 is like the junior. So senior and junior, where we bring experienced nurses and new nurses and even nursing students. We bring them all together in one room, and it's like a networking slash getting to know each other and just everybody having fun together. So we are all about that
Yeah, I
bridging
love that.
connection.
So let me segue into this question, because I think as a nursing student and as a nurse, your career is very, unique, right? Very like straightforward, right? There's only one thing you can do, right? You're working at
No,
a hospital, you're not, right? Well, not one thing
there's
you can do,
there's
right? But
so many things you can do as an RN. Actually,
there
there's
are. My bad. I take that back.
so many things.
Okay. Let me ask a question then, because you're gonna really like this. So, where you are today, what do you consider the most valuable advice you have ever received, or advice that has impacted you the most? And you can name a few if you'd like.
Um, I feel like I'm like hearing all types of wisdom all the time, but one thing that has stuck with me is, well, 2 things. One, when you're at the bedside, never let your guard down. Right when you think you know everything, first of all, it's impossible to know everything. There are nurses who've been doing labor and delivery, only labor and delivery for like 25, 30 years, and they're still learning new things, which makes sense because with technology improving, we have new like devices and new procedures and new meds. So, first of all, you're always learning. So, always have like that student mindset. Um, that was supposed to be my second. But so never let your guard down, never stop learning. Um, because as soon as you put yourself into autopilot and you think you're like super comfortable,
Yeah.
that's when things go bad. So you always have to be on your toe and like on your toes and not let your guard down. Well, I guess that's two in one.
There you
Never
go.
think you know everything, don't let your guard down, and then two, never stop learning because there's always going to be more things to learn. And I think it's this what do you call it, like a paradox, this ironic thing where the more education you get, the more you realize how much you don't know. I don't know
Okay.
if you notice that with people, like people who get like their bachelor's in psychology think they know how to analyze people just by like how they're sitting and crossing their arms.
Yeah.
And then there's like the PhD educated person who's like, I know that there's so much that I don't know. So never stop learning.
All right. I love that. And just to give a little more insight in your field, do you feel that your industry has changed since you started?
Um, I yes and no. I think that change is slow. Um, and that's also one of the reasons why I want to get into research eventually, because there has to be people behind the scenes who are putting in the work to make better changes. But I think that's like an unpopular side of nursing. Um,
Mhm.
People just don't want to think about that and just do
Right.
things the way things are done. So there's a bunch of scholarly articles just sitting there waiting to be analyzed and like put into action. So that part of change I think is slow. But I mean, I hope but also at the same time there are changes happening every day, probably on every unit. Um, we have something called like near misses, or like near miss meaning like, let's say I had a medication where like the vials looked really similar and like I almost gave that to the patient, but then I caught my mistake and I'm like, oh, I caught my mistake, I'm going to give the proper one. That is still technically an incident report, I would say, because what can we do to make sure that there's no confusion between the two vials in the future? Because what if the next person doesn't catch that mistake? So small things like that, probably making changes on units everywhere and
Okay.
lots of hospitals. But I think big changes take big time to
That's
see.
fantastic. No. And because you've worked at 3 hospitals so far, right? So, what skills have you found vital for your job or your resume? Or, like, what skills as a nurse has helped you jump around hospitals the most?
Mm, what skills? I think having that student mindset. Ugh, nurses hate know-it-alls. Like there are always
Okay.
students who like, yeah, we like to see that you know your stuff and that you're trying, but if we're trying to show you how to do something, then that's probably their nice way of saying you're doing it wrong and this is a better way. But at the same time, as you learn your skills, everybody has their way of doing things. Um, I don't know, just always having an open mind, um,
That's great.
being adaptable and flexible. We love those two words in nursing school. You have to be adaptable and flexible because every like the general way things are run will be the same no matter where you go,
Okay.
but the procedures and processes and rules are going to be a little different no matter where you go. So you have to be willing to like pick up on those tiny differences and go with whatever workflow they have at that new place.
I love that. And this is more office politics. What organizational challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them? And to sort of add to that, in this field, what mistakes did you make early on that you overcame? And what was the biggest lesson for you?
Politics. How did I overcome it? I Politics?
Or like administration, right? Because, or you mentioned you were union, right? Were you
Oh,
union? Do you feel like when you're going through those negotiations of like deciding I'm going to go into work or protest, like things along that nature? If you don't have any, then you're fine. If you've worked for fantastic hospitals, everyone go look at Stella's resume and go apply. But all in all, like if you haven't experienced it, then you're very lucky and good on that. But if you have, sometimes, it's like, oh, admin doesn't get along with, the nursing staff, or management is fighting the union contracts, like things like that. Not necessarily, red or blue or anything like that.
I wasn't. Yes, it was mandatory to be part of a union at my old hospital, but I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but I didn't really vote on union issues when I was there. Um, and also their meetings are usually in the daytime, and we're night shifters. Like we would just want to go home and like be done with our shift and not stay over. Um, but I think in general, my union was very supportive of the nurses, so I never really had like big issues with them. The politics stuff, I want to say that I'm learning this about myself these days. I don't have like a good judge of character. I
Okay,
always give people the benefit of the doubt and like assume that everyone is nice
good.
and kind-hearted
Yeah,
without like yeah. Um so I have been told that I just like am too forgiving and accepting of people, and sometimes I open up myself up to these people assuming that they're on my side.
right,
And this is probably true no matter where you go in the workplace, but in the hospital setting, nurse setting, it can be pretty cliquey. And
okay,
because I don't have that good judgment of character, I just like trust everybody and love everybody, um, which has backfired on me a few times.
okay.
um,
Do you want to share like friendships that have just like sour,
like
or
nothing sour,
friendships
and I think
are?
that's like a good and bad thing. I think because I treat everybody with the same kindness,
Mhm.
um, instead of like talking behind their backs, I feel like being overly nice to people usually won't get you in trouble. But there have been times where like I opened up about like my personal stuff, and maybe this is my bad for opening up to coworkers about my personal life, but
Right.
like I shared all of this information with them, and
Ah!
then like the next shift, a few people were like, "Hey, I heard this and that about you." And I'm like, "Oh, it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to share with like the entire unit."
Right.
So I'm trying to like filter myself a little more and be selective about like who I share what information with. Um, so the clicky stuff, I try not to like side with one group more than the other. And also, it kind of takes me a while to figure out the different groups. So I
Okay.
guess that's like a good and bad thing.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. And you sort of touched on something really funny, right? And I do ask people, it's a fun question, fun segment. Dealing with your personal life
Yeah.
at work. How has that been for you? And because sometimes you're dealing with a bad breakup, a bad relationship, and you still have to work. I I agree and disagree with you, right? Because sometimes you need to talk to Esmeralda, the 67-year-old accountant, and tell him about my life. Where you wouldn't think about doing that to a stranger, but there's some comfort there, and sometimes you need to just talk to people. How have you navigated, dealing with hard things, whether it's like romantic or familial, in the workplace?
Yeah. So, I mean, and sometimes a stranger's like perspective on your situation might be more helpful than like people.
Untainted, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Look at me justifying like laying out your laundry at work.
Right.
So when I was a baby nurse, when I was like new at this hospital, I kind of just like opened up about my relationship at that time with the nurses over there. And I was like doing
Told everybody. Like, just kidding. They told everyone.
yeah. Like at the nursing station, not even like in the break room. Probably things were a little slow, so we had time to like sit and chat. Um, but I kind of mentioned that I was doing things behind my parents' back with this partner and this and that, and they definitely judged me for that. Um, and then another time, well, yeah, relationships at the hospital. Oh, so because I opened up about myself like early on, basically as soon as I got there, they kind of knew about my love life, and people would always ask like, how is it going?
Right.
And in hindsight, all these people knew that this person and I were not the best fit for each other,
Mm-hmm.
but they also didn't know me well enough to be like, you gotta leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, would keep tabs on my relationship, ask me how it's going. And then when I actually told them like later on that we weren't together anymore, a lot of them were happy for me, to the point where I was like, if you knew that this was not healthy for me and like not good for me, why didn't you say so? But
Right.
then I realized that it's not their place to tell me what to do, what not to do.
Right.
Um, so I mean,
I think as a woman, sometimes too, you're like, you just have to go through it. Because I can tell you, Stella, that person is horrible, dumb bum. And until you're ready to let it go, you're not going to let it go. So
yeah.
I think, and both of us, not to divulge too much into.
You become defensive and like stand
Yes,
up for that person.
exactly. Like he doesn't stink that much. Just kidding, but like you're really you're embarrassed, right? How do you show up to work with everyone telling you to leave your partner and you're still with them?
Yeah.
And only because you said I could share this, but both of us experienced being with a partner that didn't have goals, didn't really, want to push themselves, or maybe they were just stagnant. I'm just there to be kind, right? We're being kind. So they were just stagnant. And as not women, but individuals, my career kept me sane. Like I was like, my relationship is not right. I don't like this whatsoever, but my career, I can keep moving forward with that. So
I feel
for
you.
me, I dislike all these social media people or these old people that like, you're just going to be left with your career and blah, blah, blah. Like, no, listen, your career is not going to make you cry, right? If anything, you're going to be happy you're getting a raise. You're going to be happy with that title jump, like title, it's so like reflecting on it now, I'm so thankful for my career in that aspect. And I don't know if you want to share anything because your partner was nice. Mine was like super toxic. So it's like, how do you choose your career and then ultimately choose yourself? Because that's what we both had to do.
Yeah. I want to, even after, even though we're not, well, I was together with that person for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that they were progressing at their own pace,
Right.
which was not
The same pace you were at.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like at some point, um, I had like this epiphany where I was like, huh, well, first of all, I do a lot now, but I did a lot more back then. And I think that was like a self-defense mechanism where I felt like I had to make up for my partner's lack and pick up their slack and like do double the amount of work because they weren't doing what I thought they were supposed to be doing.
Right.
So like, I don't know. In the moment back
Distracting
then,
yourself. Mm-hmm.
say that again.
You were distracting yourself, but with something
Yeah.
positive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that it was a good thing because I was being productive and making moves and doing a bunch of stuff. But now I'm at a place in my life where after leaving that relationship, I'm kind of trying to reach out to friends a lot more, hang out with my family more, and like I'm trying to enjoy my downtime instead
Right.
of always trying to fill it with something, because doing nothing can be productive sometimes too. And sometimes that's a work life balance, right? Sometimes you do need to slow down and smell the roses and things like that. So I'm trying to this sounds so lame, but I'm trying to just like binge watch TV without
Yeah.
feeling guilty. um yeah, I'm working on trying to be unproductive and not feel guilty about it. So
I love that. No, I think you kind of touched on something that most women, and I know it's a very hot topic right now with, oh, you build someone up or you want to, be with your partner, you're growing together, but you also do have to check the temperature in both pots. Like one is boiling while the other one is at a light simmer. And if you're trying to cook the same meal or, eventually, boil the water to boil some chicken so you both have something to eat, that resentment builds up. Or,
yeah,
you end up realizing, like, is this what I want? I think sometimes you have to check in, like, are we growing together or is it not a functional relationship for me anymore? And the love and all this other stuff,
yeah,
it keeps you there. But at the same time, we are not spring chickens anymore. Like, we have to think about it in the aspect of, am I miserable? Am I working long hours, volunteering, doing all these extracurricular activities because I don't want to hang out with my partner because it's embarrassing to say what my partner is doing?
hmm,
And to sort of play the devil's advocate, it kind of makes them look worse because it's like, Stella's this high functioning, super involved individual, highly driven, highly involved in the community, and her boyfriend is at home. You know what I mean? Like, and not to say that was your experience, but
it
you think
was.
about it in that perspective. You think about it in that perspective, and it's not until you're out of the relationship that you realize, oh, what was I doing? But that's okay, because you know what? You live and you learn. And then at the same time, when you say, it's time to relax, I actually had something similar without even realizing. I had a weekend job. I was working 7 days a week. One, because I told myself I want to accelerate my resume, which I did, highly recommend, grind it out for 1 year. It was tough because I was working at a dance studio on the weekends, sometimes working late, taking the bus back home to my apartment. And my partner at the time was like, you're working too much, you're working too much. And I'm like, well, money, we don't have kids, it's time to do it. But also, I don't want to hang out with them anymore. Like,
Mm,
I'd rather be like, well, if I was just, had a free weekend, it was a fight versus, oh, I have to go to work. You
uh,
can't get me on that. Anyway, but all in all, it was also like, oh, you weren't working and I had two jobs,
yeah,
you
I'm
know?
than you.
Right. And it wasn't until I got out of that relationship that I was like, oh, what was I doing? I was like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever, lesson learned, lesson learned. But all in all, as working individuals, you can say like you've excelled. Even Bill Gates, right? I'm sure he dealt with some sort of personal, issues as he was progressing in his career. Everyone experiences it. It's just learning how to navigate it. If you are in a dysfunctional relationship or you're questioning your partner, focus on your career,
Mm,
because you know that your relationship has an expiration date. Your career is only going to continue and carry on. So there you go with that segment.
wow. Mm,
And to segue back into professional development and
yeah.
your career process, I know you're talking about becoming a teacher, but what are your long-term goals and how do you plan to get there? And you mentioned you're teaching, objective as of now, but what was that plan once you realized you had it, and what's your plan moving forward? And I guess to add on to this, lecturing, right? I'm sure you kind of had some natural skills there because people were telling you, hey, are you a teacher? But how are you developing that yourself, knowing that you want to lecture at a completely different level once you get your MA?
So that's actually something I've been meaning to ask my professors, because surprisingly, a lot of them are labor, like obstetric background professors. So I've been meaning to like set up a Zoom meeting or something and ask them, hey, you're doing research and teaching now, but tell me about your journey of how you went from bedside obstetrics to where you are now. And like, what pointers do you have for me? This is what I want to do. Tell me if I'm on the right track. Um, but I keep missing I haven't gotten around to emailing them. But that is something I want to ask them because sometimes I feel like I have this goal here and
Right.
I feel like I might be taking the long way when there might be like a more direct way, or maybe I'm doing like too much. Kind of like, I don't know, I'm just thinking of this analogy now. Like, we have sliced bread available to us, but sometimes I feel like I'm working with the yeast and the warm water with the sugar and like making my own bread and like waiting for all of that to happen
Mhm.
instead of like going straight to the source almost.
And it's not a shortcut. It's just effectiveness and efficiency. That's
Yeah.
something that we use in public administration a lot. And there's truth to it, right? Why reinvent the wheel? That's
Yeah.
awesome. So who are you asking? How do you know who to ask? How about
So
that?
my current professor, I'm taking a research class right now with a bunch of master students who are getting ready for their nurse practitioner license. So there's the nurse practitioner side where they do direct patient care, and then there's the nurse education side where we're working on like the behind the scenes, the research and stuff. So for the nurse practitioners, this research class is so boring and so annoying and intimidating to them because it's a bunch of reading articles and analyzing, critiquing it, and like that stuff. But to me, this is what I'm in school for. Like, that's what gets me excited, reading all of these articles, seeing what research has been done about certain topics. Um, so the professor leading the research class is actually an OB, has her RNC OB. She's like certified as an OB-RN, which I eventually want to get. I'm working on it right now. But she's doing that. She has that background and she's doing research and teaching. So that's like everything that I want to be doing. And I want to ask her, are you still working the bedside or are you just doing research? And how did you get into research? And how did you find um, like positions for it? And recently I took a certification class where she was also a DNP, a doctorate nurse practitioner. And she told me, because I stayed after class and I picked her brain about like how I can move towards my goal. And I guess she noticed I was saying a lot of like my academic degree, this and that. And she said, Stella, you don't have to wait for a degree to make those moves. Don't let a degree stop you. And so I think that was something I really needed to hear because I think I'm kind of stopping myself from making moves because I think I'm not at that level yet.
Right.
But maybe there are positions out there for me to like, try it out before I dedicate my entire life to it.
It's imposter syndrome where you're questioning yourself, but you're totally qualified. And statistics show that women do it more than men. Men will apply to a position they know they're not qualified for and they just do it. And so it kind of also goes with like, this is like advice I go with men that I tell men all the time, or guys that are a little like shy with women. Listen, talk to every single person in the room. You
Mm,
never know who likes you. And
yeah.
it applies in the workplace too, because you never know. You might not be the most qualified, but you interview really well and somebody likes your potential. and that's going to get you into whatever position you'd like. So that's awesome advice. I love that. And sometimes it does take having conversations with people to trigger like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's possible.
Sometimes you've heard it in the past too, but it's like the timing of when
Yes.
you hear it in your life, you know?
Yes, no, 1000%.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about this, you know, I would like to know how you assess and correct your weaknesses to benefit your professional development. I assess myself all the time, and if I see myself presenting and I'm like, "Oh, I'm stuttering too much or something." Okay, let me practice. Let me read more. What do you do? How do you know when you have a weakness? Can you tell, or do you wait for other people to tell you?
For me, actually for a little bit, I used to literally write down my weaknesses.
Wow.
Um, when I was still learning when I was brand new to labor and delivery, one of my house supervisors said that on my drive home, I should replay the shift, think about what I did well, what I didn't do well, instead of just driving autopilot. She said, reflect on your shift and think about what changes you can make and what you did well and what you should repeat. And that's kind of helped me in the teaching aspect and me functioning as a bedside nurse. Um, Sometimes like one flow will work better than the other, like the order that I do things. Sometimes that works better. And so I don't know. First, for a while, I used to write it down in like this little notepad I had. Um, I know a weakness of mine is remembering how to navigate the electronic medical record. Uh,
Mhm.
so we as nurses, we have to chart a lot.
Mhm.
We'll do like one procedure, and that'll take like 5-10 minutes. But charting all of that can sometimes take longer than the actual procedure. So knowing what forms to fill out and like what sections to fill out, sometimes I'm not the best at remembering, especially now since I'm only going to that hospital once a week. So because I know that about myself, I write it down on my little notepad. Go to file, go to open, go to patient information, and like all those steps, I will write it down. And that way, even if I don't have somebody next to me, I can always refer to my notes and like do it on my own.
I love that. And to sort of close this fantastic conversation, which thank you so much, Stella,
Thank you.
is there any final career advice you would give someone? And it could be nurse related or just general career advice that you would have wanted at the inception of your career, maybe midpoint of your career, and even now. Like, what do you want to share with the public?
I think, well, learning how to study is, well, first of all, never stop learning.
Right.
But also learning how to study and what works for you will help you in the nursing school process, and I guess in life too. One book I always recommend to everyone who asks about study tips is How We Learn by Benedict Carey, Carey. And that book, I just happened to pick it up during the summer before nursing school. And that book is so great. I don't know why other people don't talk about it. Maybe I should do a book review or something.
Do a book review, Stella, please.
But never stop learning. And the whole mentor stuff, surround yourself with mentors. Um, what else? I think just in general in life, never stop doing. N- Don't be don't be afraid of doing things for the first time.
Right.
And I don't know, just never stop doing new things.
I love
Maybe
that.
I'll close it with that.
No, I love that. And I would just like to close off by saying, you know, my biggest takeaway is seeing how well rounded you are truly as a professional, as a citizen, as an individual, as a Christian. Where, you know, to me, that's an aspect that I'm going to strive for, because it's not just surrounding yourself with the mentors that are around you, but the people that are in your proximity. Not what do you bring to the table, because I feel like that has more of a negative connotation, but something that is influential that your friends can then inspire you to do. Actually, I'm going to rebrand that to that, because to me, professionally, I see myself wanting to be more involved, whether I join a professional, organization outside of work. And you do that so well, Stella. So thank you so much. Like, you are a true embodiment of someone who can have it all. Your career,
We
your
can all
education,
have it all.
everyone, go volunteer, go to church, and go, be involved. So
I have one more thing, I guess.
go ahead.
Never stop loving, because I don't know, like there's the whole thing where like you should give more than you take, and
Yeah,
you'll never regret giving, I think. And it feels good to give
I
and
agree. I
to
agree.
love.
No, 1000%. And I think that's why we pushed ourselves, because I would categorize nurses as community outreach. You are helping your community, whether you are in whatever community you end up working for, that's the community that you're impacting. And for me, even going into this career, helping people, like helping others the way you would want to be helped, that is something that really does touch my heart, because it doesn't take away just being nice, being kind,
Yeah.
and you experience it and you feel 1,000 times better,
Yeah.
truly helping society and helping people. So
And
thank
I'm
you.
not saying that you should be out there helping people in like Ukraine and trying to figure out how to fix the Ukraine situation. You don't have to look far to help people.
Right.
People near you, next to you, in your neighborhood need your help. So, yeah.
Food for thought, everyone. Thank you so much, Stella. We appreciate everyone for listening today, and we hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.